Hi everyone, I'm Shelly and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. I'm back with another Question the Narrative video, and today's topic is once again the North Pole because the plot thickens. I hadn't originally planned on doing another Question the Narrative video this week. I was just going to kind of take a breather and record another Smoky God installation. But other than that, I was just going to wait until next week. But a few days ago, a viewer sent me some very interesting and pertinent information about the North Pole, especially regarding the climate of the North Pole that I just couldn't wait to share with you. Before I get to that, though, I just also wanted to share with you this map that Addie sent to me. So thank you, Addie, for sending me some more cool information. And I love maps, first of all. But what I found really interesting about this map, besides just the entire fact that even Tartaria is listed on this map, but look at the landmass of the North Pole and how gigantic it looks. Now, I know you're going to say that that is due to the distortion because of the way that the map was drawn. And I understand. I understand that. However, another thing that I found very interesting is just how close it seems the landmass was to the northernmost continents. Look here. I mean, we don't know what the scale is. Maybe we actually do. No, I don't see a key here. But it certainly seems like it's much closer than what we would typically imagine the North Pole to be in regards to distance from other lands. I mean, look at that. Very close. Every time that I imagine the North Pole, I always imagine something, just really far away, very remote. And I also pictured, just because of the map that I always share, the Mercator map, I just pictured this very small little tiny area in the middle of the earth, and it very well could be. But this just really does kind of open up the imagination to how large is or was the North Pole. So I went on Encyclopedia Britannica just to get some more information about this map because I wanted to know, first of all, that it was a genuine map and also when it was created. And so this map was created by Abraham Ortelius, born April 14th, 1527. He was a Flemish cartographer and dealer in maps, books, and antiquities who published the first modern atlas. So this map was in the atlas Theatrum Orbis Terrarum, and that was in 1570. Trained as an engraver, Ortelius about 1554 set up his book and antiquary business. About 1560, under the influence of Gerardus Mercator, so there's the mention of the creator of the Mercator map of the North Pole, Ortelius became interested in map making. Within a decade, he compiled maps of the world on a heart-shaped projection of Egypt and of Asia, as well as the first edition of the Theatrum, which contained 70 maps derived from 87 authorities and engraved in a uniform style. And here is another, that's just another photo. I just am sharing it because I love old maps. They're so detailed, they're beautiful, and you can just spend so much time looking at all of the intricacies on them. And they really do give a lot of information about the time period, much more than the maps of today do, in my opinion, of, the things that are going on in those specific areas. Nowadays, it's all kind of business as usual on our maps. But now it's time to share with you specifically what I came here for today. So this is not going to be a super long video. I just wanted to get this out there because it is so closely related to what my last video was about regarding the North Pole and the climate and how very temperate it seemed to be in so many accounts of it, whether you are listening or reading stories of Hyperborea, or whether you are reading Norse mythology or certain Asiatic mythologies. Also, the Smoky God book that I've been reading. In that book, the explorers, when they get up to the North Pole, they find that it is very warm and certainly not what you would expect of the North Pole. So you have to ask yourself, is all of this fiction? Well, I don't know about that. because this is, let me see, this is actually from a newspaper. And so Teresa sent me this, so thank you so much, Teresa. This is from the Caledonian Mercury, and this was from Edinburgh, Scotland, on Wednesday, August 12th, 1767. I looked it up, and yes, the Caledonian Mercury was an actual newspaper in that time period. And so let's see what they had to say about the North Pole in 1767. Now, I will say that most of the article is not about the North Pole, so I'm just going to share with you the parts that are. So we will just start right here. And I also want to ask you just to bear with me because this is written in a font that is from the older English. So a lot of the S's look like F's. And so I kind of have to differentiate and make sure that it's whether it's an F or an S. So if I pause while I'm reading, that's probably why. In proof of the Northeast Passage, he advances that what the Russians call the Frozen Sea is only with propriety so called nearest the coast and the mouths of rivers, the fresh water of which easily congeals, but that further out to sea, towards the North Pole, the sea is opened, and is so far from being frozen that, contrary to the common opinion, it is much warmer under the pole than farther from it, and nearer to the continent. This he confirms by a variety of concurrent proofs. Moxon informs us that he had sailed very near the pole, and that it was as warm as at Amsterdam. Goldens, who says he made 30 voyages to the north, says in the 89th degree he found an open sea, without ice, and as deep as the bay of, I'm going to say Biscay, it's very hard to see. So just stopping there for a minute. The fact that they found an open sea without ice is very, very similar to what is written about in The Smoky God, which, yes, is sold as a fantasy fiction novel, but that a lot of people believe is actually has at least some truth in it, as happens with many books. The mariners of a Dutch vessel in 1675 relate the same. Others affirm that the pitch of the ships melted with the warmth of the air. So at the North Pole, the pitch of the ships melted with the warmth of the air. The accounts of Greenland agree that the northern parts of it are more fertile than the southern, and the former accessible when the latter are not approachable for ice. Krantz, in his late account of Greenland, confirms all these particulars and adds that whole flights of birds make for the North Pole and Greenland for the sake of warmth, when all the northern parts of Europe are covered with ice. So these birds are flying farther north than you would ever expect them to for warmth. And this is something else that there is a footnote about in The Smoky God. There are references to this where sailors notice that there are flocks of birds who are flying farther north to get warmer air, warmer temperatures than you would ever expect them to. And that is because these birds instinctively know that it is warmer at the North Pole. Can't really differentiate what this says here, but it says that the degrees of latitude are not such certain marks of the degrees of cold as the productions of the earth, and that even in the valleys of Norway they cut their corn twice in the space of 3 months. From all these particulars the author concludes there is the greatest probability that by keeping further to the north than any adventurers had yet done, and let me go up here now, an open sea and passage may be found to the west coast of America and the East Indies. And from there, it stops talking about the North Pole. But so what do we learn from this article that was written in 1767? We learned that there are accounts of sailors, of mariners from 1675 that talk about how warm the North Pole is, how sometimes the air is so warm that it melts the pitch on their ships. So I think that does warrant further, investigation into the North Pole and trying to differentiate what we're told about the North Pole and what is actually happening at the North Pole. that's all that I wanted to share with you. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one either here or over on Instagram. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. And I hope you have a great day.